The end of this season saw an end of an era on Merseyside as Liverpool fans wave goodbye to Jurgen Klopp. But today, instead of Arne Slot taking the reins, it will be me as I try and take Liverpool back to the very top. We will be using an updated database to pick things up after the final game of the 23-24 season to do this rebuild in real time. So let's dive into FM and see what this is all about. So guys, here we are right at the end of the Premier League season. We have picked things up just after the 2-0 victory against Wolves in real life. Anfield has said goodbye to Jurgen Klopp and yours truly has come in to be the new manager. Now, I do have a little disclaimer. We actually did this save live on twitch.tv/HoodGaming UK. It was a great lot of fun. We did a fair few seasons of it. It's all in today's video, nice and condensed into a normal rebuild format. But I do have to say, we have started our brand new save over there with Chelsea. If you fancy seeing me do the same with Chelsea in real time, please head on over to Twitch and see and drop me a follow and see when I'm live. It's very good fun. But this one was absolutely brilliant. And this is how we started things. So we came in, end of the Premier League season. Obviously, we made sure we simulated enough times or restarted the game enough times to make sure that we didn't win the Europa League or anything like that, to make sure that we did not go anywhere we shouldn't have done. But obviously, Liverpool finished third in the table, 82 points, majority more draws than they probably would have liked this season, I'm sure. But this is how things are going. This is where we're going to start things off. And I do actually have a transfer budget of £64 million, which is much more than I was expecting at this point. But we are going to have to see what we are going to do. We do have several players in the last few years of their contracts. Thiago, Jean Matip, Adrian, a couple of these players. We're going to try and keep things as close to real life as we possibly can. So Thiago will be leaving and stuff like that. But we are going to have some interesting ones to negotiate over the future seasons with Virgil van Dijk and Mo Salah. We are also going to try and sign some players in this transfer window. So I'm going to come back at the start of actual season number 1 to see what business we actually did do. So we are going to start on the transfer screen, and I have only made one signing, and it is Michael Olise. Yes, we picked him up from Crystal Palace for £70 million. Yes, he, in my mind, is going to be my Mo Salah replacement. I'll talk about Mo Salah very shortly, obviously being in the last year of his contract, but I think Olise has everything to be the next big thing on that right-hand side for Liverpool. Coming in, he's 22 years of age, hasn't been capped nationally by anybody yet. Spoiler, he goes to England, which is going to be really interesting to see what actually happens there in real life. But I think ultimately he is a fantastic player to have in that right-hand side position. Now, I mentioned a few things about a couple of players. Virgil van Dijk, for instance, doesn't really want to stay at the club potentially. So yeah, you can see not prepared to renew in his contract at the time of interest being shown in him from elsewhere. Who wants Virgil van Dijk? Saudi Arabia want Virgil van Dijk. And we've also got Mr. Mo Salah as well. If we go to keep him, he doesn't want to stay either. His agent's not having any of it. So that's going to be very interesting to see what we can do with him. So we're going to see what happens with these guys. I'm open to things happening. I'm open to selling them. Obviously, we still have some time in the transfer window before the season starts. But we do have a little bit of money left, 15 million in the transfer budget. But if we were to sell those guys, we would have had more. Speaking of the tactic for this season, this is what we are going to be running, and this is kind of how I started to set things up. It's going to be a 4-3-3. I've made this one myself. I've released it over on the channel. You can go and check it out. I'll leave a link to it down in the description. But the main premise of this one was to have this man, Connor Bradley, in the right back spot. He got a nice improvement in the January or winter update, winter data update, and I wanted to see what he was all about. So we're going to play him as our starting right back, which allows this man, Trent Alexander-Arnold, to move into midfield. I'm going to be playing him as a deep line playmaker in that defensive midfield spot. He's got a really high passing and technique attribute, good vision and stuff like that as well. Good composure on the ball. We are going to use that to our advantage. He is going to be our attack starter. We're not going defensive in terms of that midfield setup, but this is kind of how I'm talking about setting up for the season. I'm really not sure who this other centre-back is going to be. at present. We've got Kwanzaa, we've got Joe Gomez at the moment, we've got a couple of other different options. I don't know who that's going to be at the moment, but we're going to see what happens. The midfield three of Trent, McAllister and Szoboszlai looks really good. The front three of Elise, Diaz and Nunes. Yes, we're putting our faith in Darwin Nunes, and we're going to see how that gets on. Competitions wise, obviously we have the Premier League, the FA Cup, the Carabao Cup. We also return to Champions League action, so it's going to be very fixture dense this season, but we're going to have to see what we can do. If we go into the Premier League and just have a look at the season preview, just to set your expectations, we are the second best team in the league apparently, behind Manchester City, who are evens to retain their Premier League trophy. Let's simulate season number one and see how we get on. So in this season one review, I have to start with a January transfer window because lots of business moves were done. Before the summer window closed, we did say goodbye to Joe Gomez, who left to join Spurs for 30 million. Mo Salah continued to refuse to sign a new deal with the club, so was sold to Barcelona for £27.5 million because his contract was ending at the end of the season and I didn't want to let him go for nothing. And then the big one, and the one that I was the most conflicted about. Virgil van Dijk departed the club to join Al Ittihad in Saudi Arabia for £80 million and is now on a very cool £1.5 million a week in salary. But those departures did allow me to go on a little bit of a spending spree, spending £245 million on 5 new players. First up was the VVD replacement as Ousmane Diomande arrived from Sporting for £43.5 million. We followed that up with the additions of 2 wide players as we added Nicolas Gonzalez from Fiorentina for an initial £50 million and of course Swedish wonderkid Rooney Bargi from FC Copenhagen for £17.25 million. With me already having several doubts in Darwin Nunes as the main striker after his performance in this team so far, we also signed Benjamin Sesko from RB Leipzig for £43 million. And then finally on deadline day, we activated the £91 million release clause on Florian Wirtz from Bayer Leverkusen to really bolster our midfield to an elite level. So we did have lots of squad turnover in season 1 in that January period, however on the field we were pretty darn successful. The first trophy available for us in the 24-25 season was the EFL Cup, where we faced Nottingham Forest at Anfield in the 3rd round. Ibrahim Sanagre opened the scoring for Forest, but we did manage to recover and take the lead as Cody Gakpo and Harvey Elliott scored a goal in each half to put us into pole position to advance to the next round. But then in the 93rd minute, Taiwo Awoniyi scored to send the game to penalties, where Curtis Jones saw his penalty saved by Matt Turner and Cody Gakpo smashed his penalty against the post to see us fall at the first hurdle. And that wasn't our only disappointment this season as well, because as we return to the Champions League, I got FM'd, but we'll get to that point. We had mixed results in the league phase, winning 5 of our 8 games, but we did suffer losses to Monaco, Bodo Glimt and Red Bull Salzburg as I was rotating the team heavily at the time. We did enough to gather 15 points and finish 11th in the table and progress to the knockout stages of the competition. First up in the knockouts was French side Marseille, who we swept aside, winning 3-0 in France before rotating and winning 2-1 back at Anfield. We then faced Fenerbahce, who gave us little resistance as well, as we managed to beat them 2-0 at home and then 3-1 on the road to secure a safe passage into the quarter-finals. Here we faced PSG and Nico Gonzalez fired us into an early lead in the first leg, giving us a 1-0 win at Anfield, knowing it would still be a tough task in this second leg. But in Paris, we actually struck first ourselves as Florian Wirtz applied the finish to a nice flowing move, curling the ball around Donnarumma. Randall Kolo Muani did pull a goal back for PSG on the 69th minute, but I was still confident that we could see it out. And then it happened. In the 93rd minute, Kylian Mbappe sprung into action, receiving the ball from a corner and curled PSG level. Then, in the 94th minute, Xavi Simons powered directly into the penalty area and squared it to Kolo Muani to break our hearts and send us crashing out of the Champions League. However, that is where the disappointment in all the competitions stopped, and we were actually good in the rest of them. We made a fantastic start to the Premier League campaign, winning our opening 5 games, but suffering silly losses to the likes of Bournemouth and Ipswich. However, in November and December, we went on one hell of a run, winning 8 of our 9 games, including wins against Arsenal, Man City and Chelsea in a row, while scoring 12 goals in the process. Our summer signing, Michael Olise, was also electric in his first season. The former Palace man provided 13 goals and a massive 21 assists in all competitions, and really looks like an elite player and that perfect Mo Salah replacement. In the second half of the season, we continued to look impressive, handing out heavy losses to teams in the process, but after defeating Chelsea at Stamford Bridge in the penultimate game of the season, we were crowned Premier League champions. And in the FA Cup, we were handed an easier path to Wembley as we defeated Exeter, Millwall, Chelsea and Rotherham to book that semi-final place. Here we faced Brentford, but this was a completely one-sided game with Calvin Ramsey running the show from right back. The young Scotsman scored twice in the game and provided an assist in a 6-0 demolition of the Bees. So we advanced into the final where we came up against Aston Villa. But much like in the semis, this was light work for us as Ibrahima Konate opened the scoring in the 11th minute and Dominic Szoboszlai doubled that lead in the 25th minute. Michael Olise then added a third in the second half injury time just for good measure to see us lift the trophy and secure a league and cup double. So for me, this was a positive first season, but I know there is much more that I could achieve with this club. And over the summer I was handed a £78 million transfer budget, but there were also several players on the chopping block at risk of being sold. So we're moving into season number 2 and we have some transfer business to tell you guys about because I was quite active in this market. We have sold several players from our main squad, the most expensive of which is this man. Diogo Jota has gone to Tottenham for £46.5 million. We also sold Fabio Carvalho. He has gone to West Brom for £17.25 million. And then on the previous page, we have Curtis Jones, who is now an Arsenal player. He left for £31 million. But that allowed us to go spending in the summer transfer window. We also picked up Savi Halsad-Naipan, one of the best wonder kids in this year's game. We picked him up. He's still only 18, the Norwegian international, but is a very good option. And the fact that he can play in several key places, key positions, both-footed. It's a win from me. We also activated the £30 million release clause on this guy, Miguel Gutierrez. Andrew Robertson wants to leave the club, so I wanted a new left back. He has a £30 million release clause. He's only 24 years of age, former Real Madrid Castilla player, 17 crossing, high passing. He is, in my mind, the perfect Andy Robertson replacement. And then on this page, we spent some money. And what I was trying to do, guys, is get some real senior players with good personalities into the squad. And I feel like I've definitely done that. We picked up Dale Upamecano from Bayern Munich for £41 million. Supremely well-rounded, this guy. Fairly determined personality. I think him and Konate can be a real force as our new centre-back pairing. Looks very, very good. Very elite tier. We also picked up Khéphren Thuram on a free transfer. Yes, the intake of French people is key. I want that nice French core in this squad. 6'4", 24 years of age. He was out of contract at the end of the season. We approached him in January. We got him on a free. He is going to be a very welcome addition into that midfield. I personally think he's a better player in game than Curtis Jones, so that's why we made that deal. We also picked up Jan Sommer for £11.25 million to be a supremely good model professional at the club. That is his personality. He is 36. He's going to be our backup goalkeeper because you can never have too many goalkeepers in FM, and I think Kelleher is going to be demoted down to the third choice. Over 100 international caps for Switzerland as well, so this is exactly the type of player that we wanted as well. And then in the centre-back position, we spent £38.5 million on this man, Per Schurz. I don't know how much he's going to play. He's going to come in as a squad player. He's happy with that. 25 years of age, 6'3", a model citizen personality yet again, so the perfect addition for us as a squad. And if we go into the tactic, this is how we are going to run things now. Alisson in goal, Bradley, Konate, Upamecano and Gutierrez. That midfield three is going to stay the same. Trent Alexander-Arnold, McAllister and Szoboszlai. And the front three has seen a little bit of a tweak. It's going to be Olise, Diaz and Benjamin Sesko for the year. But I also think depth-wise we're pretty good now. We've got Robertson, we've got Nico Gonzalez, we've got Diomande, Thuram, Nunes. We are are really stacked on the bench, and I'm really happy with our volume of squad depth, which we are going to need, because if we look at the competitions, guys, we do have 5 on our plate this season. Obviously, winning the league and the FA Cup meant that we faced Arsenal, or we will face Arsenal in the Community Shield. And then we have the Premier League as well, which we always go in to see the pre-season odds. We are still the second best team in the league, apparently. Man City aren't as heavy favourites despite us winning the title last season, which is good to see. We are now 3-1 to win the title. Some weird things have gone on in this world as well, guys. Erik ten Hag is now the Nottingham Forest boss. He did get sacked by Manchester United. And we also have Antonio Conte. He's not gone to Napoli like he has done in real life. He has been at Newcastle, got sacked by Newcastle, and he is now the new Fulham manager. As I said, FM is weird. We're going to simulate season number 2. Let's see how well we did. We opened the season with the Community Shield, where we took on Arsenal in one of the most one-sided games I've ever seen, but we couldn't break the deadlock. Therefore, the game would be settled via penalties, but both Nico Gonzalez and Darwin Núñez saw their penalties saved by new Arsenal keeper Yassine Bonu. And also this season, we had a bit of a stinker in our defence of the FA Cup. We did manage to beat West Ham away in the 3rd round, but then got absolutely pumped by Chelsea at Stamford Bridge in the 4th round. But we did swap one English domestic cup competition for another, as we blasted through our opposition on the way to an EFL Cup final, including a win against Manchester United in the 4th round and a 5-4 aggregate victory over Chelsea in the semis. And we played in the final against Newcastle, and if this result happened in real life, someone is getting fired. We hammered Newcastle so much in this game that going into half-time, we were actually in a 6-0 lead. In the second half, we took our foot off the gas a little bit, but still scored another 2 goals to win the game 8-0 and lift the club's first EFL Cup since 2022. However, our defence of the Premier League was much more successful, as we started the campaign like a house on fire, even going unbeaten until we lost to Chelsea at the end of November. In January, we had a few more transfer moves as we sold some unhappy players, as Endo departed for £20 million and Tsimikas left to Newcastle for another £20 million. We did make 2 signings of our own, as we added Milan Skriniar from PSG for £27 million after noticing that he had been transfer listed. We then activated the £29.5 million minimum fee release clause for goalkeeper Diogo Costa to be the successor for Alisson, who is now 33 years of age and was dropping several stinkers in big games this season. As we moved into 2026, we continued to dominate, only dropping 6 points from the 57 available to win our 2nd Premier League title in a row with 3 games to go. And we even had a nice moment on stream as Manchester United were forced to give us the guard of honour in the following game. This season we showed our class in the Premier League, achieving a total of 96 points, beating Spurs of all teams to the title by a whopping 16 points. And it was redemption time in the Champions League as we looked to bounce back from last season's FMing. We were pretty decent in the league phase, but we did lose games against RB Leipzig and of course PSG, which seems like they're our bogey team in this competition now. However, this season we did secure 16 points and an 8th place finish, meaning we moved automatically into the round of 16 and avoided that playoff fixture. It was English opposition in the round of 16 as we were drawn alongside Arsenal, and we would have to travel to the Emirates first. We actually have a decent record against Arsenal, and as Luis Diaz gave us the lead on the 23rd minute, I was hoping that would continue. Kai Havertz did equalise for Arsenal in the second half before Trent was unlucky enough to turn the ball beyond Alisson to give the Gunners the lead. But then back at Anfield, things were a little bit more routine as we hammered Arsenal throughout the game, with Darwin Núñez bagging a goal in each half to see us progress to the quarter-finals. It was another English foe in the quarters as we faced Manchester City, with the first leg being at Anfield. And this was one of the most ridiculous Champions League quarter-finals you have ever seen, as we carved City apart with 6 different players getting on the score sheet in a remarkable 8-1 win at Anfield. This meant that we could massively rotate in the second leg, and I did suffer a defeat at the Etihad, but the damage was already done and we progressed with a 9-3 win on aggregate. It was AC Milan up next in the semis, and the demolitions continued as in the first leg at Anfield we smashed them 6-1 on the night, with Benjamin Sesko netting an impressive hat-trick. Things were a little more tame at the San Siro, but the game finished 2-2 on the night, with us moving into the Champions League final for the first time in this save. And of course, it was PSG PSG in our way in that final. This time we had the right mindset and we started the game well, with Alexis McAllister scoring with this glorious free kick which beat Donnarumma at his near post. But then less than 60 seconds later, PSG were level through that man Kylian Mbappe. So we went into halftime level but came out a completely different side in the second half and steamrolled PSG to get our own back from last season, winning the game 5-1 in the end to lift the Champions League trophy, which my Twitch chat seemed to enjoy. We are crowned champions of Europe again. Takes the trophy over. I'm seeing this as a huge improvement on season 1, and securing a Champions League title is massive for the club. But I do want one more season to see if we can win every single competition on offer. I had 91 million in the transfer budget to enhance this team, so let's get to spending. So here we are going into the transfers for our third and final season, and I've initially been able to recoup a lot of money in player sales. We've had Darwin Núñez depart the club. He has gone to Manchester City of all teams. I lost my patience with him. He is gone. £70 million up front for Darwin Núñez. He has departed. We also sold Khéphren Thuram again to Manchester City for £66 million. And then the strange thing, the most strange thing in my mind, we sold Kelleher to Wolves for 40 million quid as well. We also said goodbye to Alisson. He's gone to Saudi Arabia for 25 million pounds. Tyler Morton we sold to West Ham for 13.75 million pounds. Kwanzaa's gone to Real Betis for 12.75 million pounds. Per Schur to Barcelona. I admit that one didn't work. We sold him for 10 million pounds as well. And then we went crazy on some of the signings. I bought Jude Bellingham, guys. We bought Jude Bellingham for 300 million pounds. Yes, it's a lot of money. I'm aware this rebuild has gone off on a tangent, but I felt like signing Jude Bellingham. I haven't used Jude Bellingham since early access, and I'm sure you guys are wondering, why is Jude Bellingham number 68? Well, at the time I couldn't give him the numbers that he wanted. We'd already assigned number 5. We'd already assigned number 22, which is what he actually wanted. So one person in my chat suggested that 1968 was the year that Hey Jude by the Beatles was released. So Jude Bellingham is number 68. But yeah, we spent 300 million pounds on him from Real Madrid. I hope he gets that return because his contract has lots of bonuses in it. So we're going to have to see how well he gets on. We also activated the release clause of Mark Gahey as well. He comes in to be a new centre-back for us. He's developed fantastically well at Palace. He's got caps for England as well, so that helps with the homegrown nation stuff and registration and all of that jazz, whilst being an elite tier centre-back for us as well, which is great. And also another homegrown player is Emi Martinez. He was coming to the end of his career with Aston Villa. He wanted to leave, 33 years of age now, 6'4", World Cup winner, comes in to be our backup goalkeeper. I'm quite happy with it. Yes, we spent £17.25 million on it, but I had lots of money to spend. I don't know if you've clocked that yet. So going into the season, if we quick pick our best 11 without restriction, this is what the game is saying for me. Now, I beg to differ on some of this. I would put Dominik Szoboszlai there, but it is also telling me to play Florian Wirtz as my striker. I would probably prefer to play Benjamin Sesko. This would be the lineup going into the season. Alisson is now departed. Diogo Costa has come in. Bradley, Konate, Gahey, Gutierrez, Trent, Bellingham, Szoboszlai, Olise, Diaz, Sesko. So there's a balance of existing Liverpool talent in here, and there's a balance of new signings as well. But looking at the star ratings, this team is ready to cook this season. And we have lots of competitions up on offer. We actually have 6 trophies that we could win. And I made the bet with my Twitch chat that for every one of these I didn't win this season, we would give away a copy of FM25 to them. So, as I said, mentioned earlier, we're doing a save with Chelsea. We'll probably do something similar. Make sure you're coming and following over on Twitch. But let's get into the season recap of season number 3, our third and final season, because it is going to be a monster season. For a second season in a row, we opened the year with the Community Shield, where we faced FA Cup winners Chelsea, but this was pretty one-sided as Bellingham scored on his debut in a 5-1 win, with Michael Olise pulling all the strings. The second trophy that was up for grabs for us was the UEFA Super Cup, where we faced Europa League winners Roma in Budapest. And yet again, this was the Michael Olise show, as this time he scored a goal in each half to see us win the game 2-1 and lift trophy number 2 of the season. Next up in the season was the EFL Cup, and this was a trophy that I really wanted to retain. Our route to the final was a tricky one, but we did manage to beat Bournemouth, Chelsea, Newcastle and Spurs in the semis to make a second final in a row. This time it was Manchester City in our way, but thanks to an Alexis McAllister penalty, we lifted trophy number 3. Meaning at this point, there was no FM25 giveaway for my chat. In the Premier League, we showed our dominance right from the off, winning our first 14 matches in a row before suffering our first defeat of the season in December in the Merseyside derby at Goodison Park. This season also saw Benjamin Sesko really emerge as a top talent at the club, as he managed to bag 43 goals in 48 appearances in all competitions and was the club's top goal scorer. And I'm sure you're wondering how the £300 million Jude Bellingham did in his first season in red. Well, Jude scored 15 goals in all competitions along with 21 assists to cost me a total of £16.2 million in goal and assist bonuses, thanks to that ridiculous contract I agreed. We were still impressive in the second half of the season, but we did suffer a few defeats on the road against the likes of Chelsea, Manchester United and Nottingham Forest. But we weren't to be denied a third Premier League title in a row with 95 points, with Manchester United finishing 11 points off the pace. Moving into the FA Cup, we blasted through the early round opposition, including another 5-1 demolition of Manchester City, who really haven't been the same since appointing Roberto De Zerbi as their manager. It was Bournemouth up next in the quarter-finals, and we really didn't perform on the day, losing this one 1-0 thanks to a goal from Justin Kluivert. So that meant copy number 1 was available for the Twitch chat. And finally, we had the Champions League, where we were very impressive in the league phase, winning 7 of our 8 games, only dropping points away to Marseille. No surprise we finished top of the league phase table and moved directly into the round of 16. It was Spanish side Real Betis in the way first of all, and they offered little to nothing in the way of opposition as we would progress with an 8-2 aggregate win. We were back against English opposition in the quarters as we took on Manchester United, with the first leg being at Old Trafford. I was expecting this to be a tough one after Rasmus Højlund gave United the lead in the 13th minute, but we rallied around nicely and got goals from Olise, Bradley and a Szoboszlai penalty to take a nice 2-goal lead back to Anfield. Højlund opened the scoring again in the second leg for United, but Bellingham was on hand to make it all square just before half-time. Then in the second half, Olise put the cherry on top of the cake to see us move into the semis with a 5-2 aggregate win. It was Inter Milan up next in the semis, and we had to travel to Italy for the first leg. But we were woeful in this one and really failed to impact the game at all, with Inter getting goals from Bradley Barcola and Gianluca Gaetano to take a 2-goal lead back to Anfield. Now I have to jump in here and I have to say, this is the biggest FMing and most unbelievable result game you have ever seen. Like, you just had to be part of it live. It was crazy. Michael Olise opened the scoring for us to reduce the deficit to just a single goal, and we were battering Inter Milan at this point. But the FMing begun as Federico Di Marco scored for Inter on the night with one of their 3 shots on target. That meant that we crashed out of the Champions League at the semi-final stages, but look at these match stats. We had an XG of 5.12. We had 3 goals disallowed. We hit the woodwork 3 times, and we had 9 clear-cut chances. But we lost 3-1 on aggregate. And I couldn't believe it, but that did mean that there was a second copy of FM25 available for my Twitch chat. And despite failing to dominate every single season, we are going to call it a day in this save here. And you can pick up the save over on my Patreon right now if you wanted to carry on this journey with this remarkable Liverpool team that we have built. If you do want to see the new live save, head on over to Twitch as well. I'll leave a link down in that description. We are managing Chelsea right now, and it's been a very interesting first season, let me say that one. And if you do like these sorts of rebuilds on the channel, guys, check out this playlist. It's all the rebuilds that we've done on this year's game.